Go ahead, punk. Make me play.
This is Bumping Into That Sound.
Welcome to Bumping Into That Sound, the rock-centric music and tone podcast where we dive deep into the riffs, rhythms and stories behind your favourite artists, tracks and instruments. My name is Francis and I'm your host. Each episode we explore the story behind the sounds, the people and the equipment. For those that don't know, Bumping Into That Sound is part of the Bumping Into family of podcasts. The idea behind Bumping Into is long-form conversations across a wide range of topics. And for those just chasing music and tone, you're on the right channel here at Bumping Into That Sound. Today on the show, I've got Laurie Marlow from Australian hard rock outfit Heaven. The band were a big part of the early 80s hard rock scene in Australia, but leaned more towards the evolving early heavy metal sound that would become a staple of the 80s. The band toured the world with Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Mötley Crüe, Black Sabbath and Kiss for more than 4 years while being based in LA. And now Laurie's got the band back together. They're about to do a run of Australian shows before heading over to Japan and Europe. There's also talk about a new album being made. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of hours with Laurie to go over his story, the origin of the band, and some of the wild stories from 4 years spent on the road with some of the biggest acts of the world during the 1980s. So let's jump into my chat with Laurie from rock band Heaven. Laurie, how you going?
Yeah, good. Yourself?
I'm good, thanks, mate.
That's excellent, mate. That's good. Lovely Saturday morning, eh?
It's a great one. Mate, if you're up for it, I'd love to go, before we talk about the band, we talk about yourself and talk about your origin story and how you got your, I suppose, you know, how you ended up in Australia and the drive into music.
Well, I was born in Croydon in Surrey in London, and my dad was in the entertainment industry in England. He worked with all the big 60s stars like the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Freddie and the Dreamers, Jerry and the Pacemakers, all those sorts of people. Generally doing like production, that sort of thing. And he also used to do the old wrestling, British wrestling shows as well. And he used to take me, occasionally he'd take me along to one of those shows. I mean, at the time, I was probably only like 7 years of age, six or 7 years of age. And, of course, as a young kid, that sort of sparked my interest up at that point. And I was lucky enough to meet the Beatles. Dad took me into the dressing room and sat me down, and I was very quiet, and I was just sitting there, and Dad and Paul McCartney were talking, and basically he came over and he said, "Is that your son, Bill?" And Dad said, "Yeah, it is." And he came over and patted me on the head and gave me a Coca-Cola, which for me was that was pretty cool. So yeah, then a few years later, my uncle had already moved to Australia with his family, and my mum always had itchy feet, and she basically she wanted to get my dad out of the entertainment industry because he was always away from home. So he agreed, and we moved to Australia. And then from that point, he went into other things outside of entertainment, and we moved to Adelaide. And that's where we immigrated to, Adelaide. And
it's a big step for your old man to take, because I mean he was in the thick of it. That was the peak prime time of the music industry was booming and changing, and there was just so much happening. And to say, all right, let's pack up and go to a foreign land and start again.
Yeah, but that was my mum. God love her. Yeah. She just she was never settled. She always wanted to move about. She was just like that. So so we moved to Adelaide, and The primary school I went to, I made a friend, a guy called Dave Moyes, who ended up being a guitar player for a while in Air Supply. And when we were sort of like, 13 or 14, he says to me, and I'd never thought much about music in between all those years. And he sort of said to me, he said, I'm gonna form a band. And I went, right. He goes, yeah, you want to be in it? And I said, yeah, what can I do? And he goes, you can play bass. And I went, really? What's bass? And he goes, it's the deep instrument. It's like a guitar. And I went, right. I said, tell me who plays bass in a band. Who plays bass in the Beatles? He goes, Paul McCartney. He said, I'm in. That was it. Right. So he sort of got me started with learning guitar. He showed me a few little bits and pieces on guitar, and then I just started picking up bass myself. So I'm a self-taught bass player. And then over the years, like teenage years and stuff, just doing shows in Adelaide, started off sort of doing like parties, as everyone does, mates parties and stuff like that. And then sort of graduated to doing proper shows. I think I did my first actual professional show at 15. Wow. It was a place called the Theberton Town Hall. And no, it wasn't. No, sorry. It was Norwood Town Hall. And it was a theatrical show called Bye Bye Birdie. And the music in it was like 60s sort of style, 50s, 60s style music from memory. And that was my first actual paying gig. And so from there, it sort of it was onward and upward. And I went through quite a few different bands in Adelaide through the 70s. Funnily enough, I was in a band called Airborne. There's now a very big band in Australia called Airborne. Different band, but it's just funny how names get
come back around,
recycled. Yeah. And that band Airborne did quite well around the Adelaide scene. It never got out of Adelaide. But I was just at the end of my last year of high school. And back in those days, you did like there was your 7 years of primary and then your 5 years of high school, which we called back then, it was called matriculation year, which was the 5th year. And I was just at the end of that. And I remember AC/DC were actually a tiny band back then. They were very small, but they were sort of doing the circuit around Australia. And they didn't have a bass player. Malcolm was playing bass. And Bon actually came to one of my gigs when I was with that band, Airborne. A mate of his ran the room. And a guy called Rick Lennon. And Bond didn't stay to the end, but he gave Rick Lennon his number where he was staying and told me to give him a ring because they were looking for a bass player. And I sort of went home and my parents said, well, you've only got a couple of months left of, high school to do. Look, just let it go. If you're that good, somebody will pick you up later, So I didn't do it. So I rang up and I just said, oh, look, I can't do it. I'm just finishing high school. And so they moved on and a couple of weeks later they went to Melbourne and that's when they got Mark Evans.
Wow.
And then from that point, from the Airborne side of things, I joined a band called Heroes. And there was a bloke in it called Alan Fryer. And this loud Scotsman, and we became very good friends. And I worked with the band for probably 18 months, and then sort of I went through a few other different bands. A few years later, moved to Sydney on my own. Decided to get it because Dad said to me, he said, look, Adelaide's a small town. If you want to do a sort of have music as your main thing, then you're going to have to go to Sydney or Melbourne. So I picked Sydney, moved to Sydney in 1980, and I knew a few people up here, a few Adelaideans that had sort of moved up before me and that. And I used to sort of go to a lot of Swanee gigs, John Swan, Jimmy Barnes' brother. And I used to live around the corner from the guitar player of Swanee's band, Brad Kelly, or Kelly as we used to call him. And because I had a car and Kelly didn't have a car, I used to take him to the gigs because I get it for free then, you see. And we got to be, really close. And he said to me one day, he goes, I want to move on from doing what I'm doing with Swanee. He said, and Van Halen had just hit the scene at that point. And he said, I'm really into this guitar player from America called Eddie Van Halen. I said, oh, okay. So you want to do sort of, like full-on rock stuff? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, I'm putting a band together. I've been looking for musicians anyway. So I said, how about, you come with me? And I've got a couple of guys in Adelaide that I could ring and see if they want to come up and form the band. Anyway, yeah, okay. He said, who you got in mind? I said, well, there's a guy I worked with ages ago, and I've kept contact with him. He's in a band now called Fat Lip in Adelaide. His name's Alan Frowe. And he goes, is that Scots bloke? I said, yeah, you've met him? He goes, yeah, always hassles me at gigs. Always hassling me. I went, oh, right, okay. So I said, well, come on, because there were no cell phones back then. Come over to my place and I'll give him a call. I've got his phone number. I'll give him a call. So Kel came over to my house. We sat down, rang Alan's number. Alan picked up and I said, Al, it's Laurie. He goes, oh, hey, mate. How you going? I said, yeah, good. I said, I've got Kelly here with me. He goes, Kelly from Swanee. I said, yeah. I said, we want you to come up to Sydney and try out for our new band. And at that point, he had just been knocked back from joining AC/DC.
Oh, wow.
Not knocked back, but I mean, Brian got the gig.
Right.
Because Alan had gone for it. He'd gone into Albert Studios in Sydney and flown up, and they took Bond's voice off of the AC/DC recordings and put Alan's voice in there and that. And from what I was told, it worked quite well. But the boys had decided to go with Brian. And so Alan was at a bit of a loss because the Fat Lip thing that he had going had gone back to Adelaide, and basically they were just splitting up. So anyway, Al said, yeah, I'll fly up on the weekend and we'll have a jam. So Alan came up. We had a jam. I got a friend of mine in just to fill in on drums, and we just jammed on just AC/DC stuff really, and a few other little bits and pieces. And that was it. Alan said, right, he said, I'm going back to Adelaide. He said, I'm going to pack my stuff up and I'm moving to Sydney and I'm joining your band. So that's how we got Alan in the band. And then with Alan came some already booked shows for Fat Lip.
Oh, okay.
Which was a bonus because the contracts had already been signed on the shows. And so when Alan came up, we had, I think, about a month or something to get some sort of set together to do the first show. So we just took on the name Fat Lip from his old band. And that's how that started. From that point, when Alan arrived, we had to get, Kelly wanted it to be a 4-piece, but Alan wanted it to be a 5-piece. So there was a bit of argy-bargy on that. But anyway, Alan got his way, and And he said to me, why don't we use the old Heroes rhythm guitar player, Gordon Klaproth? And I said, that's a good idea. Don's a great bloke, because we used to call him, just short for Gordon, we just call him Don. And he said, yeah, Don's a great bloke. Yeah, we'll get him in. I said, and what about using Robbie Hanna from Heroes as well, the drummer? So we contacted them, and they were all into it. And within a couple of weeks, they'd moved up as well. So we were doing shows for probably, I'd say, for about 3 months or something, under the name Fat Lip. And we got signed to. We were with Sphere Agency at that point. I think it was Sphere. And then Lobby Lloyd from Lobby Lloyd and the Coloured Balls was actually working in an agency. I think it was in Harbour, which was the big agency in Australia. And AC/DC's manager, Michael Browning, had rung Lobby up and said to him, look, I'm looking for a new band, sort of like an AC/DC type band. And, what's out there in the rock scene, as in, something that's quite tough. And Lobby said, well, there's this band from Adelaide, and they're called Fat Lip. And he said, I've seen them, they're fucking great. So that sparked Michael Browning's sort of interest. And Michael came out. We were working quite hard as Fat Lip. We were doing quite a few gigs. And I remember Michael driving out to the back of Blacktown somewhere, a gig out the back of Blacktown. And we knew he was coming because Lobby had contacted us and said, oh, look, AC/DC's old manager's coming out to have a look at you. Be on your best behaviour. And Alan was a shocker, mate. He always liked to shock people, doing weird things. Anyway, we were expecting this bloke to turn up in a suit and tie and all that, multi-millionaire sort of bloke. And he walks this bloke in a T-shirt and thongs and stubbies. And it was just sort of funny. It was just like, oh, you're Michael Browning. Okay, all right, fair enough. Anyway, cut a long story short, he watched the show and he said, well, I'd like to manage you. But at the same time, because Alan had done the vocal on AC/DC's stuff as a, what would you call it? Like an interview process to get the job with AC/DC. They were interested in signing us to Albert's. And we had a bit of there was a bit of a dilemma because we didn't know which one to go with. And we knew that there wasn't, there was bad blood between Michael Browning and Albert's.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's a bit of shit went on. I'm not privy to all that, but I know that they weren't on speaking terms. So it was it would have been great if we could have had Albert's as our record company and Michael Browning as our manager, Yeah. But that wasn't to be. So we had to make a choice. And Alan said, well, he said, I'd like to go with Michael Browning. And I said, well, I don't know much about either. And Kelly didn't know that much. All we knew is that Albert's, had all these great Australian bands. But anyway, we ended up going with Michael. And after a few weeks, he just turned around. He said, I don't like the name Fat Lip. He said, so he said, we're going to have to come up with a a new name for the band. So there were a lot of names that were bandied around, and we went up to Michael's office up in North Sydney one day, and we're just sitting around, and I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Michael's wife that came up with the name. I'm not, or it could have been Alan, I'm not sure. And somebody said Heaven Sent or something. And we all looked around and, well, what about cutting the scent off it and just calling it Heaven? Michael said, yeah, he said, I could go with that. And we all sort of thought, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So that's how the name came about. And at that point, Michael was always, because we done a lot of covers in our show, and we only had I think 3 original songs that we'd written at that point. So we got in, we had to get into writing mode, and none of us had really, Kelly was the only one that had really written songs before. I'd never written a song in my life at that point. And so we went through the long, arduous task of trying to write some songs. We finally got an album's worth of songs together, and went into Trafalgar Studios in Leichhardt or Annandale, and demoed them. They come up pretty good. But, you know, I mean, we're just an Aussie pub rock band, so it was all straight down the line. There was no fancy bits in it. It was just straight, you know, Aussie pub rock, like Rose Tattoo, like AC/DC, you know, all those bands, Screaming Jets. We've all got that same sort of, I don't know what you call it, lineage, I suppose.
Yep.
And it was sort of it sort of sounded a little bit like AC/DC because it was the chord structures were so simple, and Alan sounded, you know, a fair bit like Bon, really, in ways. But Michael took that out and he shopped it around to a lot of the big record companies, and we got signed to RCA here in Australia, and who was it? CBS Records, which I think is now Sony, worldwide.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we went ahead and we got recording support from the record companies, recording advance. We went in and we made the first album, Twilight of Mischief, and that was done at EMI Studios, EMI 301 in the city. The engineer producer was a guy called John B. He I don't think he'd done a lot of producing. He was mostly an engineer, but it was his first time at producing. Look, it could have come up a lot better. I mean, if we had our time again, I know there's a lot of stuff I would have done to it, but you know, for what it was the day, and it was a budget album because the recording advance wasn't fantastic, you know, it wasn't great. But I think all up, I think it came to about 10 grand or something for the album, so it's very low. But yeah, and then we put that out, and we started to get momentum. Radio stations weren't playing it, I mean, they were playing Duran Duran and Flock of Seagulls and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
We didn't get much of a look in on radio at that point. But we did do a lot of live shows, and like for a long time, I think it was about 6 months, every Friday night we would do a triple. which is 3 gigs in a night.
Wow.
Yeah. So we would start off at the Royal Antler at Narrabeen. We do an early spot there, and then we do a middle spot as a support to a band at Mona Vale, which was usually Midnight Oil or Cold Chisel or the Angels, something like that. And then we'd have to shoot out to Sylvania from Mona Vale, which is a long way, the other side of the city, and we'd do the late spot at Sylvania.
Jeez.
And this went on for ages. And we'd already, I mean, we would start doing gigs like on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And
Different time.
so we were getting a lot of work, and of course, getting through the work, we were getting recognition, and Michael got us on the old TV show Countdown with Molly Meldrum.
Did that make a big spike? Like as soon as you're on Countdown, is it like pow? Now album sales kick up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were different to a lot of the bands that went on there. I mean, because we were really rough and raucous and loud, and
yeah, and it was very pop centric. It was very clean cut and pop, and yeah.
At that time, yeah. So you had all the British bands, the British pop bands. Punk had just come through and sort of was starting to fizzle out a bit. And so even though radio wasn't picking up on us much, TV was.
Wow.
And then we got to do Donny Sutherland's Sounds, which was another show similar to Countdown. And it was on a Saturday morning, and that really helped spike it as well. And then Hey Hey It's Saturday and WROK and all these other shows. And it was the TV side of it that really, really helped with our sales. Yeah. So we probably did the Australian circuit. It was about 2 years of a hard slog. We supported all sorts of different artists. We were support to Motorhead. Ian Gillan, when he had his band, Gillan from the singer of Deep Purple, when he had his own band, we did that. But we also did Bo Diddley, the African American, what would you call him? Bluegrassy sort of type player, or blues player, and Steve Marriott from was he from the Faces, Small Faces? I think that was what he's from. Yeah, and so we were doing lots and lots of different supports. We got a lot of experience, let's say.
Yeah.
From doing all this stuff. Yeah. So from that, the band just built up, and from 1980 to 1982, with all that sort of background gigging behind us, 1982 we scored the Iron Maiden tour, The Number of the Beast. It was their first time out here, and they actually had another band scheduled to do the support, but they'd seen us in a magazine in England. They'd seen a picture of us, and their management had asked for us to do the support, but the promoter had told them that we'd already left and gone to America, which we hadn't at that point. We were about 2 or 3 months off of going to America to do the Judas Priest tour, Screaming for Vengeance tour. So anyway, we were still in Australia, we were still gigging, and Iron Maiden arrived, and one of their boys saw it in, I think it was on the street, the old magazine, the music magazine on the street, where it was like a gig guide, and they saw that we were playing at a place called Gladesville Tavern, and at this point we were just packing pubs out, big time. So we had this gig at Gladesville Tavern this night, and I was aware of who Iron Maiden were and sort of knew what they looked like and that. And I've jumped up on stage, and we've got a sea of people in front of us, and Alan, Alan was so awkward and what's the word? It was uncoordinated for a lot of things, right? And this bloke said to him, he said, "Do you want to ride my motorbike through the crowd up to the stage?"
Oh, geez.
We didn't know this at the point. And Alan went, yeah, I'll ride the motorbike in. So what they did is they started the bike up outside the doors, and they put the bike in neutral, and they pushed him in. Pushed him through the crowd, and he was revving the bike up, right? And they pushed him up to the front, and Alan jumped off the bike, jumped up on stage and grabbed the microphone and started singing, right? And we were rocking on the first song, which was a song called Storm. And I look over to the left-hand side, and through the sea of people, I could see these guys just standing against the wall, checking us out. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, geez, that guy looks like the bass player of Iron Maiden, Steve Harris. So I'm playing away, and they did not look part of the Australian punters.
Oh, really?
Oh, you could tell straight off the way they were dressed.
Wow.
Just the way they were dressed. Anyway, so we did our set, and we came off stage, went into the back room, into the dressing room, and then there was a knock on the door. And Alan opened the door, and there's these guys standing there. "Hello, we're Iron Maiden. Can we come in?" I was like,
Wow.
yeah, come in, boys. Good to see you. So we got chatting to them, and they really loved the show. They loved Alan coming in on the bike. They did. Although we didn't know that Judas Priest already did that. Rob Halford did that with their show. But anyway, they loved it, and they said, "Look, we've got our first show's tomorrow night. We can't cancel the band that's on. We got to let them do the one show. Can you come and do all the rest?" And we said, "Fuck yeah, we'll come and do it." So the band that had the support, they were how can I put it? They were paid out. They got paid to what they would have got for all the shows.
So they got paid to not do it.
Yeah, they got they did the first show, first 1 or 2 shows, and then they were cancelled. Funnily enough, that band they were from Western Australia from memory, and 2 of those guys, I think, ended up in Baby Animals.
Really?
Yeah, I think they were called the Boys. And I think it might have been Eddie Parisi, and I don't know who the other guy's name is. but I think that they were in that band that got cancelled. Yeah.
Wow.
So we went on to do the Number of the Beast tour and became really good friends with the Maiden boys. And we just had a ball. We had a ball. And when we went to do Brisbane's Festival Hall, we had been banned from Queensland for noise problems and other things that Alan would say about Joe Bielke.
Joe didn't like it.
The old premier. We got banned 3 or 4 times or something. Anyway, we went back with Iron Maiden doing the Festival Hall, and Alan got up on stage and he said, "Well, you tried to keep us out of Queensland. Well, we're fucking back, and we're back with a fucking vengeance." And he started walking around the stage singing. I don't know whether you can put this on radio, but he started singing "I fuck Flo and Joe don't know." He was a shock with things like that. And we just killed it everywhere we went throughout the country with Iron Maiden. It was just fantastic. And that sort of finished up around, I think it might have been November 1982. And we had a little bit of a hiatus. Alan took off. He had interviews to do in America because we were about to embark on the Screaming for Vengeance album with Judas Priest. Before that, we tried to get onto the Saxon tour in England, but they wanted us to pay £10,000 to buy onto the tour.
Wow, geez, that would have been a lot of money back then. Back then
it was, yeah. And Michael, our manager, just said, no. He said, look, as much as it would be good to do Europe with Saxon because they're huge. He said, I've been working on Judas Priest. He said, I've just got you signed to ATI, which is an agency in New York with a guy called Bill Elson. And Bill Elson was the big agent in New York. And Bill Elson and Michael got us onto the Judas Priest tour, and it didn't cost us anything. All we had to do was sort of get there, you know.
Yep.
So Alan went over early, did a few weeks early, did a few interviews. I think he might have done a couple of TV interviews and stuff like that as well. And we followed a few weeks later. Ended up in Los Angeles, and I remember we were driving down from LAX, which is the airport, and we drove through Sunset, and there was the big record shop, Tower Records, which was the it was well known back in the day, and they had a massive big neon sign out the front of it, and we're driving down, and on the sign, because it usually has things like all the big bands that are playing in LA. And on this big sign, it said, LA and Tower Records welcomes Australian band Heaven.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That was so cool. Yeah. And so that sort of made us, feel at home sort of thing. Was great. And we spent, probably, I think it was about a month pre-production for the Judas Priest tour, getting our shit together, like what we were going to have for the tour. And of course we were going out and checking out places that we'd heard about, like the Rainbow Room, where all the stars used to hang out, and and used to drink there and stuff. And we made the Rainbow Room a home away from home. It sort of reminded us of it us of a place that we used to go to in Sydney called the Mansell Room,
Oh, okay.
which was a hangout where all the musicians used to go after gigs. So you'd finish a gig in Sydney, and like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, you'd roll up at the Mansell Room, and all the musicians, like the Angels Boys or Cold Chisel or any of those guys, they'd all be hanging there drinking.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Rainbow Room was exactly the same, except you'd have like Jimmy Page sitting in a corner, and Robert Plant in another part of it. It was sort of like that. And then, of course, because it was starting to be the start of sort of glam bands, and Mötley Crüe used to hang there, and Rat, and I suppose later on Poison and all those guys, and of course the Priest boys and Iron Maiden boys would be in there. So yeah, it was a good hangout to be at. And so yeah, we went out on the Judas Priest tour, and it was a new thing for us because they were doing like 10,000 seaters plus.
Yeah,
so we really had to get our shit together.
Yeah.
Because here we were used to working in Australian pubs, and it might be a decent sized pub like Selena's. We used to, that used to hold a couple of thousand people from memory, and we used to pack that out without a problem. But when you walk out on stage to 10,000 plus, it's pretty awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
And so our first gig was a place called Fort Wayne in Indiana. So we had to fly from LA with all our gear out to Fort Wayne, which is right across the other side of the country. We get to Fort Wayne, no guitars.
They're lost in transit.
Lost in transit. And I'm a left-handed bass player.
Oh, so narrow market.
All right. So we get to Fort Wayne, no guitars, no bags. What the hell are we going to do? So anyway, we were lucky enough. The amps weren't a problem because the Marshall Loan Company had supplied us all our amps for the tour, so we were using all Marshall gear. So that wasn't a problem. The gear was there, but we didn't have any guitars. Jeez. So there was a local music shop in Fort Wayne that lent us all the guitars, and they luckily sourced a left-handed bass for me.
Wow, that's so lucky.
Yeah, and they got it to the gig probably about, I don't know, half an hour before we were due to go on.
Oh, jeez.
But that was so good of them to do that. They didn't charge us anything. They're just happy. We had to go in the next day, and we went in and thanked them and all that. And of course, there was a bit of a crowd in the shop, because Alan had mentioned it on stage that the shop had helped us out, and so he said we'll be going to the shop tomorrow. So a whole pile of people turned up and got autographs signed and all that sort of stuff. So it was like a meet and greet, and it probably worked out well for the shop as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think they sourced our guitars for the next show, and we got all our stuff back. But it was a bit of a fucking harrowing experience.
Yeah, high stress. Yeah.
Yeah. Because here I was thinking, oh God, now I've got to, I'm going to have to play a right-handed bass and play it upside down, and like if it's a lone instrument, I won't be changing the strings so that they suit me. It was all that sort of shit. But anyway, it worked out all right. They got our bags back and they got our guitars back, and yeah, and the tour went on, and it was a brilliant tour. The Judas Priest boys were amazing people. Loved them all. And they really liked us too. And Alan, our singer, he was always the clown. You know, he always did stuff to draw attention to himself. And, they loved him for that. There's a lot of stuff I can't say on radio that he used to do. But one thing I will tell you is one night, I think it was actually the last show of the Screaming for Vengeance tour. And Alan, in the middle of one of the songs, Alan stripped down to his undies and strutted across the stage while Priest were on in his undies. And there's like 10,000 people. And he walks up, and of course a lot of people didn't know that Rob was gay either at that point. And anyway, he walks straight up, and Rob turns around and he just looked at him and just cracked up, because he was doing this thing called the Apollo strut, which is a certain sort of walk that had been done by a very famous roadie for AC/DC. And he used to do it all the time with AC/DC and strut across the stage in his undies.
Oh, right.
So Alan took that and he did it with Judas Priest, and it was really funny because he got up to Rob Halford, and Rob's singing away, and he puts his arm around Alan, and it's singing together, and all of a sudden Rob rips his undies down. So he's standing there stark bollock naked on stage. It was so funny. I can't remember the town it was at, but it was just so funny. And there was a couple of coppers backstage, and we G'd them up because we knew that Alan was going to do that on stage. So we G'd them up to arrest Alan when he came off stage. But it was all a joke, right? So Alan went off stage, and coppers grabbed him, put him in handcuffs, and threw him in the back of the cop car. And he was freaking, and we were cracking up. It was really funny. Anyway, so he was sitting in the back of the cop car for about 30 minutes and panicking before the coppers just had a laugh and just let him go. Said, your bandmates, talk to them. They're the ones that do this up, you know. So yeah, so we actually made really good friends with the Priest boys, and went back to LA, and we had to sort of get stuck into writing the second album. And at this point, I'd done a little bit of writing myself for the first album, Twilight, and I'd sort of grown a little bit in the songwriting side of things, and so we collaborated on the Where Angels Fear to Tread album, and I came up with the title for it, Where Angels Fear to Tread, and I wrote the opening track. Musically, I didn't write the lyrics. I gave Alan the title, and I said, just write whatever you want to write, but here's the title of the song. And we end up using that as the album name as well. So, but I also, from memory, I think I didn't take credit for the whole thing. I think I put everyone's name down, so everyone sort of got a bit of money off it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that we made a lot off it, but it was. I just felt that, I didn't mind sharing.
Well, you work as a team, and everyone benefits.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't have a band where two guys are sitting in the penthouse suite and one guy's homeless. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's not gonna go well. No.
Yeah. So anyway, so we started writing the Where Angels Fear to Tread album, and we had an input. Alan, because Alan used to make friends with everyone. Alan used to go down to the Rainbow Room and coerce rock stars to come in and sing something on the album.
Oh.
So on the title track, Where Angels Fear to Tread, there's backing vocals done by Ronnie James Dio.
Wow.
But he didn't want his name put on the album as Ronnie James Dio. He's down as Evil Eyes. There's also, who else was on it? Lita Ford came in and did some backing vocals. And Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple.
Jeez.
He came in and did a couple of backing vocal tracks for us as well. So you can listen to that album, and Glenn sang on a song called Stole My Heart. And thanks, Glenn, because now I've got to do that part and it's really hard. I'm struggling to get it, you bastard. But he sang on that and Ronnie sang on Where Angels Fear to Tread. I think Lita, I think she did some stuff on a song called Madness.
Okay.
But what Alan would do is he'd go out after he'd been in the studio, and he'd go out to the Rainbow Room, and he'd be drinking with these people. He'd say, "Come back to the studio, right? Let's put something down on our album." So he'd talk them into it. Then he'd ring up George Tutko, our producer, and say, "We're coming back into the studio. Well, I've got Glenn Hughes with me. I've got Ronnie James Dio with me." So he'd have to get up out of bed or wherever he's doing, jump in his car, race down to the studio, Cherokee Studios in LA, and they'd get him to record these parts. And it was really good fun.
Yeah.
We also had a guy called Jimmy Zavala, who was the sax player for Rod Stewart's band.
Okay.
And in a drunken stupor, I think Alan was in, he talked Jimmy into doing saxophone on a song called Rock School. I could never figure out why a band like us had saxophone, but that was Alan. That was just Alan. So yeah, that's why there's saxophone on Rock School. It was just after just a night of being on the drink. So we put out Where Angels Fear to Tread, and that did pretty well. When Rob Halford heard, when I told him about our song before we'd recorded it, we were still on the road with Priest when I was working on the song, and he actually said to me, well, because we used to jump on their tour bus and drink with them. They had like 5 tour buses, and we used to jump on with Rob and Glenn and Ian Hill and that, and we'd have a party on the tour bus because we only had a shitty little sort of, Toyota sort of 9-seater or something that we were all in, and they had these massive big coaches that were all done out, So we jumped on their bus when we could, and I was talking to Rob one night, and I told him about this song that I was writing, and he said to me, he said, "Well, if you don't use it, give it to me. I'll use it."
Wow.
But we ended up recording it anyway. And he thought it was a great title. So that was what happened with Where Angels Fear to Tread. And at the time, I was also fascinated by. I've always loved cats, and I was fascinated by Black Panthers. And I discussed with Michael Browning about maybe, like in some photo shoots, maybe getting a couple of Black Panthers if we could. So on the back of the album, there's a picture of us, and it was taken in the Hollywood Hills, And the picture is we've actually got 2 live Black Panthers, and Alan's holding them. But Ben Unco, he stepped on one of their tails. And it swung around and nearly took his leg off.
Oh, jeez.
It was really funny. But that photo in the Hollywood Hills, that was actually the cave. If you ever get to see the photo, the cave behind the band, right, because we're just standing out front of this cave, that was actually the original Bat Cave from the
TV
Batman
show
series with Adam West.
Oh, wow.
You know, you see the Batmobile fly out of the cave?
Yep.
That's that cave.
Jeez. Oh, I'll have to take notice of that.
Yeah. So that a little bit of trivia there. And we spent a whole day shooting up there, and we had animal wranglers and all those people. What you can't see in the picture is that there's a very fine black leash, like a wire, from each of the cats. The handlers were holding them.
Oh, in case something goes bad.
Yeah, but you can't see it in the photograph. It's they use it specifically. You know, it's very, very fine. You can't see it, but I mean, because we were using smoke as well to come out of the cave, right? So it made it look eerie and stuff. But the Panthers started to freak out with the smoke.
That's fair enough. Yep.
So they had to have their necks sort of like their head restrained so they couldn't run off, because one of them tried to get up the side of the cave. But it was a great day. We had a fantastic day doing it. Made a lot of friends in LA. We were after the album got released, we went out on tour. I think that we went out on tour with Mötley Crüe after that. And we'd been in LA for quite a period of time at that point. So there was a bit of notoriety about us. Oh, the Aussie boys, you know.
Oh, right. Okay.
and we were. They all thought that we were sort of like I don't know, sort of tough street kid type,
like rowdy troublemakers.
Yeah. But we went out with Mötley Crüe, and it was the Shout at the Devil tour, and it was really the first
massive.
Well, it was the first big tour that Mötley Crüe had ever done of their own.
Oh, okay.
And this was before going out with Ozzy, because that's what really kicked it into gear for Mötley Crüe, was they did the Ozzy tour.
Right.
So anyway, we went out with Mötley Crüe, and there's all sorts of antics, because we were fairly sort of hardened drinkers.
Well, those guys were troublemakers. Like,
they couldn't drink. They couldn't drink like our boys. But I'm sure they learnt to. But at that point, I mean, and we'd been road hardened by, you know, all that work we did in Australia.
Yeah.
And when they went out with us, they found it hard to keep up.
Wow.
And but they did, and we used to have some wild nights. I remember we got snowed in Denver, and you couldn't do anything, right? It was like the snow was so bad, it was blizzards, right? But there was a bar right across the road from our hotel called Donny's Bar, and so we'd go out in the cold, across the road, through the snow, and into this bar. And we spent, I think, because the shows got cancelled first up. I think it was cancelled for about 3 or 4 days. So we just spent it mostly in that bar, right? And at that point, Mick Cox, who was originally with Rose Tattoo, he left the band. And we had Mark Evans, who was the bass player of AC/DC, but he came into Heaven playing guitar because I was the bass player, right? And he was good mates with Alan, and Alan wanted him in and knew that Mark played guitar as well. So we got Mark in on guitar, and I was playing bass. And Mark was a bit of a pool shark. So a great pool player. So we used to go over there and in that 4 days and used to drink heavily in there. And Donnie, the guy that owns it, used to have pool competitions. And they closed the bar off to the public after hours. And we'd be in there with the staff and this guy Donnie, right, playing pool. Well, Mark won Donnie's bar in a pool comp, and he not only won the bar, but he also, I think, he won like Donnie's car and his clothes and everything else to go with it, right? Which was funny, and I ended up being the barman. So I was behind the bar pouring drinks for everyone. A couple of nights I got really, really wasted, which Mark has got a picture of, which he threatens to show me one day, of me throwing up in the bathroom. Luckily for me, he didn't put it in his memoir book that he wrote. So, but then there was a night where we were able to get a cab, and we went from our hotel because the snow machines had gone through and cleared the roads, and we went down to I rang Nicky Six up, and I said, we're on our way down. So we went down to their hotel. Oh, mate, the antics that went on. Alan had started this game where you'd stand at the end of the corridor and he'd hang toilet paper from his ass, and there'd be someone down the other end with a fire extinguisher. Tommy Lee would light the the toilet paper, and you'd have to get to the end of the corridor for them to put it out with the fire extinguisher. Stupid shit like that. It's just shit on the road to keep you occupied. And we had people in the hotel that were complaining about us, and all these old people couldn't get to sleep, and it was just full on. Wow, absolutely full on.
What a time to be on tour.
Oh, it was. The 80s, fantastic time. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of other things that went on that I can't tell you.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
A lot of shit. But yeah, we had a lot of great times with those guys. We tended to make friends with every band that we toured with. The Motorhead boys were great. Everyone. And then after that tour finished, I think we went back to LA for a week or something, and then we had to go out on the road with Sabbath.
Wow.
And that was the Born Again tour. And they had Ian Gillan from Deep Purple singing, and Bev Bevan from ELO playing drums.
Wow.
Which was a bit strange, but I mean, he's good drummer, so and we toured with them on the Born Again tour, and we did a lot of shows to them, but from memory, I think the Canadian side of the tour got cancelled because there was a couple of kids killed themselves.
Oh, jeez.
And they were listening at the time. They were listening to the Born Again album or something, and all that 80s shit where they started blaming the bands for satanic stuff.
Yep. Okay.
I think that happened around that time. I just remember that the Canadian leg of the tour got cancelled because I was really looking forward to the Canadian side of it because I got family in Canada.
Oh, so you could have
But
gone
I never
over
got to see them. Yeah. So, but I can't remember exactly what. Oh, it's 40 years ago. Fuck. But I think it might have had something to do with a couple of kids' deaths.
Oh, jeez.
And that tour was great. I mean, the Sabbath boys were really good with us. Most of these bands let us do whatever we wanted. I mean, we were only the support band, but they gave us most of the stage. Obviously, we couldn't have any special effects that were theirs for their show and all that, but most of these bands gave us full run of the stage area, which was great. We just stacked our Marshalls and Ampeg bass amp and that right up against their gear. And we had plenty of room. So they never pulled any of that shit on us. It's like we used to copy in Australia sometimes.
Yeah.
Bands used to do that.
And the momentum must have been massive after all these tours and that exposure, all the crowds you're playing to. Like the momentum for you guys, it just must have been like this steamroller must have been happening.
It was, yeah, and it was happening very quickly. I mean, Heaven finished it. The Australian lineup finished in 1984. So all this happened over a 4-year period.
Wow, jeez.
And yeah, it was full on. And yeah, look, it got to a point where it was starting to get to a point where I think we could have probably almost gone out and done our own large headlining tours. We did some. We were doing college things that were around about 5,000.
That's still big.
But yeah, but I think that we could have, if things had gone on for maybe another 12 months, we would have been in the bigger league. It was certainly heading that way, but there was a lot of unrest in the band too.
What was it, just being away for that long? It was starting to,
that really takes its toll.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Like living in and out of hotel rooms every day of the week.
You can't recalibrate. You don't have a home base to recharge and come back.
Yeah. And our home base was Australia. So we couldn't keep going back to Australia. But I mean, LA was also like a home. So, but we'd have these short stints back in LA between tours that where we could sort of refocus. But yeah, it did start to get to people.
Yeah.
So the Sabbath tour went off pretty good, and the tour after that was Kiss.
Oh, jeez.
And we'd heard that Gene and Paul had been, fans of ours. And anyway, so I can't remember what was the tour called. It was the Animalize. I think it was the Animalize tour. And they had a big tank on stage. Anyway, we got back to LA and we we were pretty exhausted at the time. Had a couple of weeks off, but we were still doing rehearsals pretty much every day.
Wow.
And we were just sort of getting ready for our tour with Kiss. First gig with Kiss, I can't remember where it was, but I think it was somewhere over East Coast side, like New York side of America somewhere. And we were talking in the dressing room and waiting to go on, and there was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and it's Paul Stanley. And he's holding our albums.
Wow.
And he goes, "Hi, guys. Hi, how you doing?" He said, "Can I come in?" Yeah, come in, you know. I'm a big fan, and I've got your albums. Can I get you to sign them for me? So here's us, like we were all gobsmacked, you know, signing Paul Stanley's Heaven albums that he'd bought. You know,
yeah, that's incredible.
And he was such a nice guy, and and we chatted for a while, and it actually might not have been the first gig, it might have been a couple of gigs into it, because I remember him saying, "That's right," I remember him saying, "I've been watching the band from side of stage and it's been fantastic." That's right. So it would have been a couple of gigs in, and and I'd look over every night, and Gene and Paul would be standing there watching us and watching the show intently every night. So much so that we were actually there was a point where Gene Simmons wanted to take over management of the band, and he said to us, "Look, you know, if you ever want to, you know, come over to me." But we were locked in with Michael Browning. I mean, our contracts were watertight. We didn't agree with everything that Michael was doing, and there was times where we'd arc up. But yeah, I mean, the contracts were watertight anyway. But it was nice to know that, you know, Gene thought that highly of us. You know.
Yeah.
Another thing, whilst we were in recording Where Angels Fear to Tread, we were in the middle of recording, and there was the big festival, the US Festival, 83. It was a 3-day concert in San Bernardino, and it was massive. I can't tell you how many people were there, but I'm sure it looked like fucking millions. It could stretch back from the stage as far as the eye could see. If you ever get a chance, look it up on YouTube.
Okay, yeah.
Right. Look up Judas Priest or Van Halen or any of those. They were all on it. Probably Judas Priest. You'd see how big the crowd is. We were actually asked to play that. And one of the things we didn't agree with was Michael, our manager, knocked it back because we were in the studio and we'd already paid for studio time for that day. And he said, no, he said the boys are in recording. So we didn't end up doing it. So a band called Quiet Riot got to do
spot.
It. Took our spot. And fuck, did that that helped make them.
Wow.
That really helped make Quiet Riot. And unfortunately for us, we missed out. And the stupid thing about it was that George Tucker, our producer, said to Michael afterwards, he said, I'm taking the day off. Michael said, well, what do you mean you're taking the day off? I'm going to the US Festival. He said, so give the boys a day off. So we could have fucking done the gig.
Done it anyway.
Yeah. We could have done the gig, you know. Well, we went along anyway, and you know, unfortunately for us, we were side stage, not on stage.
Yeah.
But we were a whole lot of mates. I mean, we went in, we travelled in with the Priest boys, and and got to meet Ozzy. It was really funny because I was standing with Glenn Tipton outside their caravan, and there's this bloke shuffling up towards us. And Glenn said, "Quick, Laurie, let's hide." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Ozzy's coming." Oh, it was funny. Because he didn't want to, because Ozzy was fucking a bit out of it from what I remember. But yeah, so that was another thing. I mean, but something we should have done, but we didn't get to do. But the Kiss tour went on, and we had a few dramas with Vinnie Vincent. He was a bit of an asshole.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind saying it either. He was actually he didn't like the fact that Kelly, our guitar player, did a whole guitar solo thing in the middle of our set. He wanted that stamped out because he did one.
Right.
And didn't like us using this, and didn't like us doing this, and wanted us to be restrained, basically, to what we were doing. And we had been told on the front of the Kiss stage, there were ramps that went out through the crowd, and that made it look like the tracking of a tank, where the wheels go, it was made to look like that. And normally a band would say, "Well, please don't use those." But Gene and Paul just said, "Yeah, if you want to use them, use them. We don't have a problem with it." But Vinnie Vincent had a problem with it because then Kelly would run out onto this ramp, out to the end of the ramp, and do his whole Guitar Hero sort of shit, and the crowd would go nuts, and then he'd run back, And anyway, we got told one night that this came straight from Vinnie Vincent: if you do those things, you will be kicked off the tour.
Oh.
Anyway, word got back to Gene and Paul, and they pulled Vinnie Vincent aside and basically give him what for, and said, "Listen, it's not your position to do that. This is our fucking band, right? And we've said that they can do it. So shut the fuck up. And we're telling you now, you apologise to them."
Jeez.
So Vinnie Vincent had to apologise to us. So the next night we were standing there with Vinnie and said, "Oh, look, and you could tell it was begrudging.
Yeah.
I apologise for what I said. Paul and Gene have authorised for you to, go ahead and use that stuff." So yeah, there was a bit of drama with that, but it was really nice of Paul and Gene to stick up for us in that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do that. That went out of their way to help you guys out.
Yeah. Absolutely, they did, and they really liked us, and it was really funny because I when I came back to Australia, when the band finally moved back to Australia from LA, Gene, and I was staying with my mum and dad because they were living in Sydney and I didn't have anywhere to go at that point, so I was staying at mum and dad's, and I used to get phone calls from Gene Simmons.
Oh.
My mum used to pick up the phone and he'd say, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Marlow, it's Gene, it's Laurie here." and he sent me a tape of Kiss songs that they weren't going to use, and I wish I had it now. He said that we could have them, Kiss ideas, and he thought that they'd be good for heaven. Unfortunately for me, my dad accidentally taped over it.
Oh no.
Yeah, I left it up on a sideboard. And he wanted because the old cars back in the 80s had tape decks in the car, cassette players, and he saw this cassette sitting up there, so he taped Joe Cocker over it.
Oh no.
And it was all these songs that Gene Simmons had given me. So yeah, so that was that. What else can I tell you?
And then what? You just sort of fall out of contact with these people. Just time passes, and
Yeah,
then
yeah. Well, Gene used to change his phone number every few months
oh, okay, right.
because people used to get hold of it and then ring him up, and so he'd have to change it. And yeah, we just end up losing contact with them
Yeah.
over the years.
Once you came back, you've come back. Is the band now virtually starting to say that's it? We've had our run at this, or are you still coming back and pedaling?
Well, what happened after the Kiss tour? Went back to LA, and Michael Browning, from memory, told us we'll come back. That's right. Told us we're coming back to tour Australia. He said we have to leave the country. We can't get extensions on the visas, so we'll do a tour of Australia. So we came back to Australia, did a tour of Australia. It was fantastic. We like sellout shows everywhere we went, but there was a lot of unrest in the band too. With Alan, Alan was becoming more and more of a problem. Drinking wise, he was drinking a lot, and what we didn't know back then was that he probably had something like ADHD.
Right. Okay.
Right, but it wasn't a sort of known thing back then, and he was struggling with lots of demons and stuff, and he wasn't getting along with people in the band. So after the band came back from America, we did one tour of Australia and split up, unfortunately. Alan went back to the States. Didn't split up. We sort of parted ways with Alan, let's say.
Right.
We didn't sack him, but we just said we got to get a new singer. So anyway, Alan went back to Australia. The rest of us stayed here. We were looking for an Australian singer, couldn't find anyone. Record company was right behind us. We'd sort of parted ways with Michael Browning as well, sort of. And unbeknownst to us, Alan went back to America and he contacted a management company over there that did AC/DC, Lieber and Krebs. And Alan, the sly old dog, he basically led them on that it was the same band. And they signed the band up thinking it was all the rest of us. But Alan had put a band together with a drummer from Adelaide, Tommy Dimitrov, who used to be in an old band that I played in Adelaide. And he got Mitch Perry, who was guitar player. I think at that point he just finished with a band called Tallis, which was with Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big.
Okay.
And also the David Lee Roth band. So he got Mitch Perry in playing guitar, and a couple of New York guys. The bass player and guitar player were from New York. I can't remember. I think what was the guy's name playing bass? Dennis Feldman, I think it was. And I think he was in the later version of Ram Jam. That song, "Oh Black Betty, Bamalam," whoa, Black Betty,
yeah,
the Spider Bait covered.
Yep.
I think he was in the later version of that, and also the guitar player, I can't remember his name, was out of a fairly big band in New York at the time called Cathedral. So Alan put together an American lineup of Heaven. And Lieber and Krebs approached Michael Browning because Michael Browning had registered the name himself, even though it was supposed to be under us, but he'd registered the name, and he sold it to Alan
Oh, wow.
originally. So in America, not in Australia. So Alan could go out and freely perform as Heaven in America because he owned the name Heaven in America. So that sort of undermined what we were trying to do here.
Yeah.
And it all happened very quickly. Alan had asked me to go to America with him, but I declined. And then that's how the American version of Heaven formed, which I think only lasted like 18 months or something.
Right.
It did okay, but I got a funny feeling that because it wasn't the Australian band, I mean, the Australian band I think would have gone further.
Yeah. Yeah.
The American album that they did, Heaven album, was a good album. It was good, but it had that American feel to it rather than the Australian feel.
Yeah. Yep.
So that was, yeah. I think they got to tour in '85. They got to tour Japan, and then they came back, and I think it just sort of fell apart. And then they went off and did their separate things. So there was a bit of a hiatus. Alan wasn't doing anything for years and years, and I was doing other things. Here, I'd done a 2-year stint with a guy called Matt Moffat, Matt Finish.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did a 2-year stint with him. But we decided, Alan contacted me, and we decided to do a couple of shows in 1996 together as Heaven. So Alan flew in. He was only here visiting family, so we just decided to do a couple of gigs. And that was really good. We had fun doing that. We did the Collector Tavern and the Bridge Hotel. And we got good turnouts for that. But then Alan went back overseas, and I lost contact with him for a few years. And it wasn't until 2001 Judas Priest were coming out to Australia to do their Demolition tour, and they'd never been to Australia before. And I had a friend who knew the promoter, and so I got hold of him, and I was chatting away to him, and I said I'd really like to get the band together to do the Australian Demolition tour with Judas Priest. So we scored that. So I got hold of Alan, and I said, look, you want to come over and do the Priest tour? It's like, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks of touring in Australia. So he came back over. We went into pre-production. And at that point, we had virtually a totally different lineup. Kelly and John Hayes were out, and so was the drummer that we had at the time, Joe Turter. And the new lineup was with a guy called Kevin Pratt that was in a band called Boss or BB Steel, a drummer by the name of Theo Katzentoni, and a friend of mine that was in a band called Jezebel's Trash in Newcastle called Ross Flynn. And we threw together a show for the Judas Priest tour, and it was a great band, really, really good. And we did the tour. That tour, the Demolition tour, they didn't have Rob Halford with them. They had Ripper Owens, Tim Owens, and we toured right the way through Australia, and it was fantastic. And that sparked a bit of interest up within the members of the band, and also a record company over in Texas called Pulse Records. And we'd written some songs together with Kev, Theo, myself, and Alan Fryer. And we released a couple of songs, one called HOT and another one called When We Rock. And unfortunately, Pulse never really did anything with it. They sat on it. Some really good songs on that album that we did. So they just sat on that, and it never really did anything. But we did play them live. And then 2012, there was a big jump between these times. Between when we recorded with Alan, which was, I think, 2001, 2002, jumped to 2012. We didn't do anything. And jumped to 2012, and Alan contacted me and wanted to do another tour here. He'd been doing nothing he'd thrown Heaven together, but they're all local Dallas guys, because he used to live in Dallas, Fort Worth.
Right.
But they never did anything but sort of local bars. So when you look up on Wikipedia, the members that were in Heaven, there's a list of about 50.
Oh, right.
Alan would get some guy in to play a little gig, and then a week later get someone else in. And of course, they are all putting themselves down as players of Heaven.
Right.
So there's a massive list on Wikipedia of all these players, but they might have only done one gig. You know, with Alan.
They weren't a core member.
Nah. So anyway, 2012, we re-signed with Harbour Agency, and we did a full tour of Australia, and we had Rowan Robertson play guitar. Rowan Robertson was the guitar player in Dio's band, Ronnie James Dio's band, for the Lock Up the Wolves tour.
Okay.
English fella, lovely bloke. One of my best friends to this day. And we didn't know him, but we knew, because Mitch Perry couldn't do. Alan wanted to get Mitch Perry to do the tour. Mitch was going to come out, but Mitch had been playing guitar on a permanent level with Lita Ford.
Oh, right.
And unfortunately, a tour come up for Lita when we were going to do our tour here. So Mitch had to pull out of the Heaven tour. And he said, but I've got a friend who's really great guitar player, and he'd love to do it. And that was Rowan. So we said, all right, yeah, why not? You know, we'll have him come over. So we paid for Rowan to come over and got into rehearsals, and what a guy. He's just a sweetheart. And we packed houses out everywhere, basically, except for Geelong one night. Geelong was pretty empty, but there was like a massive storm that that hit Geelong, and no one went out that night. But Melbourne gigs, Queensland gigs, Sydney gigs, Adelaide gigs are all packed houses, which was good.
That's really good.
Yeah. And then Alan went back to the States, and we were in talks about doing some stuff together, and we were going to do, we're going to see if we can get onto Sweden Rock. And Alan rang me, probably would have been 6 or 8 months after we did the Australian tour in 2012, telling me that he had bad back pains and stuff like that, and not feeling too good. Anyway, he went to the doctors, and it was diagnosed with, I think it was cancer of the spine.
Oh, jeez.
And it couldn't come at a worse time, really, because we were in talks with Sweden Rock. Anyway, we were supposed to do Sweden Rock. I can't remember if it was 2014 or 2015. And Alan had all the contracts ready to go for us to do some shows there. Couldn't go, he was too sick. The cancer had got to him. And then he passed away in June or July 2015.
Jeez.
So, unfortunately, we lost our singer.
Yeah, that's no good.
And
at
a
all.
friend. Even though even though it was hard work, he was still a brother,
Yeah. Well, you went through a lot together, and you try to always remember the good over the bad.
Yeah.
So that's such a shame.
Yeah. So when he passed, we did a memorial show for him in Adelaide. It was just a small affair. It was just invites, really. And we got Alan's brother Richard up on stage to sing a few songs. Richard's a singer of his own right in Adelaide. Was never up to Alan's standard. He's still a good singer, but never had what Alan had. And I talked to Alan's brother Richard and his sister Connie, all right, because Alan wanted me to keep Heaven going.
Okay.
He said to me, whatever you do, Loz, he said, keep it going. So I talked to them and they were fine with it. They said, yeah, well, because I wanted the family's approval, to try and keep it going. So we did that, but it took us 5 sort of years. We had a few problems with the drummer, Joe Turner. He would never make himself available, and it was always a problem trying to get him. And in the end, we had to replace him because he just was holding us back. So I put Heaven back together in 2020. That's right, 2020. And what happens? COVID hits. So
there's the breaks. Yep.
Yeah. So that put the handbrake on everything. And so we were dead in the water for I don't know, till end of 2022 or 2023 or something, wasn't it? When we could all get back into it.
Well, it was at least the end of 22, wasn't it? So
yeah,
a couple of years at least.
Yeah. So I once we sort of everyone got the all clear. I pulled the guys back into rehearsals and we've been doing the hard slog. It's been really, really hard. COVID has changed the industry in so many ways. I don't know how. It was like a switch got flicked where it was just all of a sudden bands that were paying to have bands, now you have to pay to play.
Yeah.
For a lot of bands.
That's so strange.
And it's like you have to hire the room and you hire the venue, then you hire the staff, and then you hire this and hire that. No bands can get ahead. And at that point too, also agencies were not looking at original bands so much. They'd make more money off of cover bands, I guess. And so we've had the hard slog of trying to get an agent, which has been resolved in the last few weeks. We've actually been re-signed with Harbour again. So but yeah, everything's going good. We've the lineup's really good. We're going to go to Japan. I think we got a tour of Japan April.
Wow. Okay.
Which will be a lot of fun. It's a short tour, 10-day tour. We've got some Melbourne shows coming up. We're going to be up your way,
Oh,
up
that's
in
good.
Brisbane next year. So you'll have to come along to the show.
Definitely.
I'll get out. We've got management now. Distortion Nation, who probably contacted you.
Yep.
Mark Elston, he's looking after us, doing a fantastic job. In the industry in this day and age, it is so hard, but he's kicking goals left, right, and centre.
Yeah. That's really good.
And we've got November the 7th at Bootleggers in Sydney. So that's a few weeks.
Yeah, that's
December the 13th at the Bridge Hotel. And with the Bridge Hotel gig, it's going to be a bit of a different gig because Black Sabbath finished and retired, we're going to throw 6 songs of Sabbath into the set. Now, this is not as a cover band type thing. This is as heaven's salute to Sabbath because we got to tour with them. We knew them.
Connection. Yep.
We had a strong connection. We partied with them. We had laughs with them.
Yep.
And I talked to the boys and the agency, and they thought it was a good idea. I know a lot of bands doing it as a salute to Sabbath, but we actually have the connection.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to throw in half dozen Sabbath songs at the gig at the Bridge Hotel, in amongst the Heaven songs.
Wow.
Right.
Really
the singer that we got to replace Alan is a guy called Pete Millwood. Pete is sensational. He used to be a session singer for Sony.
Oh,
and he did a lot of shows in Asia, doing casinos and stuff like that. You know how they put together these shows with about 10 different singers and do all these hits and stuff. Well, he went right through the casino sort of scene over there for many years. Great singer. If I was to liken him to someone, probably a cross between Brian Johnson and Rob Halford.
wow. Okay. So he's definitely in line of your background, your flavour. Yeah.
And he's been a mate of mine for many, many, many years. So the lineup as we're doing this interview is myself on bass, Pete Millwood on vocal, Mick O'Shea from he's a well-known guy. He was in Rose Tattoo for a while, playing drums. John Hayes, he was one of the original guitar players, well, one of the earlier guitar players with Heaven, and a friend of mine who's been with me for the last 15 years in different bands. I was in a band called Black Label for 15 years, and that was this guy called Steve Down. So that's the lineup. All great players. So we'll be taking that out on the road, and with Mark Elston's help and Harbour's help, we'll be hitting Melbourne and Brisbane and
that's awesome.
Sydney and possibly even Adelaide.
That's really good. And is there any glimmer of a studio session, an EP, a single?
Yeah, we're writing action at the moment. There's we've got probably 10 songs written.
Oh, geez. Well, that's an album.
We've talked to management about going to the studio probably mid next year.
Okay.
And putting out a brand new album.
Wow. Oh, well, it's all lining up. This is It's a
Yeah.
stars are aligning again.
Nation have been a big help.
Geez, that's great that Mark's been able to facilitate that and keep that fire, reignite the fire for you guys.
Yeah. And Mark's thoughts align with our thoughts, our band thoughts. So he knows what direction we want to go.
Yep.
He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a businessman.
Yep.
And Distortion Nation are starting to get a bit of a reputation themselves with stuff.
Yep.
And and
he loves it. He loves it.
He loves
and you
Australian
can tell,
music,
when someone loves something and then applies the basic fundamental business principles to it and then layers that with a dose of honesty and fairness, you've covered everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So from this point, Nate, it's hopefully it's onwards and upwards.
Yeah, well, it sounds it, and I'm excited for you. That sounds unbelievable. It sounds great. It's going to be another chapter, and it sounds unreal. And it's great you're going to be doing the lap of the country again, possibly in the studio. It all sounds positive from here upwards.
And there possibly could be also. We're looking at Sweden.
Wow.
I have a friend who runs a big festival in Germany. I'm going to hit him up.
Well, they love your sound, don't they? They're all over it over there.
Yeah. This friend of mine, a guy called Steve Iario and his wife Renata, they run a festival called Cinerock.
Oh, okay.
And basically, over the last few years, they've been building it up. It's becoming quite a large festival, and they've had some reasonable sized bands and larger bands going through there, playing on their stages. So, Steve, I'm going to be hitting you up, mate, if you hear the podcast. So it's all looking good. Yeah.
Oh, that's great news. Yeah, I'm excited for you, and I'm looking forward to the Brisbane appearance too. No, thank you, Laurie. Look, I appreciate your time. I've had a great conversation with you.
Yeah, great, excellent. Thank you so much for that, mate. It's
no problem.
Excellent talking to you, Francis.
Thanks very much for sticking to the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do get a chance, if you can hit the like button or leave a 5-star review, that does help other people find the episodes. If you wanted to find out more about this episode, the guest, or any other episodes, head to the website bumpingintothatsound.com.au. There is also an online store, as we are the official Australian distributor for the legendary Tones Hot Mod, the all-tube additional gain stage plug-in module for most Marshall amps. Head over and take a look. Once again, thank you very much, and I hope to catch up with you on the next one.